All right, welcome back to the verdict. And as I said before we took the break, we're going to talk about the example I gave and how it relates to us. But Babajide Ogunsanwo, who has 100 years of data, did I also know you have one or two slides with which you want to explain one or two things?
The concern we have today is how will this impact not just the two leading parties, the other parties, ANN, YPP, we've got a lot of those parties. And that's because from the discussion, we've heard the INEC chairman say there will be no campaign within the last 1 week. For all the other parties, excluding the two major parties, the reason that affects them the most is what is called the TOMA, top of mind awareness. Those parties in that third category need their own political strategy to be top of mind of the voters. And so in the last 1 week, the question is, how will they keep the names of their candidates and parties on the top of mind of voters? Now, clearly we know the two major political parties have been dominating a lot of the discussions. But the concern is, since 2003, voter participation in our elections has been on the decline. Has been consistently declining since 2003.
So this is what this slide on the screen does demonstrate.
Exactly. So in 2003, voter participation, and by voter participation, I'm talking about eligible Nigerians, those above the age of 18. We see that in 2003, 59% of eligible voters participated in the presidential elections. What happened in 2015? Only 28.5 million Nigerians out of 93 eligible Nigerians who are above the age of 18 participated in that election. In simple terms, only 1 out of 3 eligible Nigerians voted. Now, this is why we need to take this seriously. What it means is that it's the minority of Nigerians, of eligible Nigerians, that are taking the decision for the majority. It means that the president is being elected by the minority.
That's right.
And if you think about it deeply, it also talks about the legitimacy of the president. Because the election that brought the president in wasn't determined by the majority of those that were eligible. It was determined by a minority of them. And so the question is, how will the cancellation of today's election affect next week's election? And here's why the two political parties should be concerned. The APC, the PDP, and again, even the other parties. First, let's talk about the APC. The evidence from INEC shows that out of the 84 million registered Nigerians, the fact is 55 million of those elected on those that are registered on that database, 55 million of them are in those 22 states that are governed by the APC. In simple terms, 66% of the names on the database are in APC control states. And so we should ask ourselves, if a lot of Nigerians are not happy by what happened today, what will they do and how will they react next week? And just before the PDP starts celebrating, one zone that the PDP is counting on is the Southeast. Well, if you also look at what happened in 2015, the Southeast zone, as a statement of fact, was the only zone that none of the states had a voter turnout above 50%. And so that should also give the PDP a lot of concern. Will the voters in the Southeast, the zone that they are relying on, will they really turn out? And again, let's look at the concerns of the ANN, the concerns that Fela Durotoye, Kingsley Moghalu, and Sowore, and the others who are legitimate candidates, who, despite the monies being spent by the two majority parties, can still say that they have a strategy to win. But the challenge is they need to be on top of the mind of voters. And if they can't campaign, if they can't advertise, what chances will they have, and what chances and how will their followers feel within the next 1 week. More than even what has happened to the parties is to also look at for voters. How does this affect voters? The common man, laddie. Right now, abnormal is the new normal in Nigeria. So we're quick to say this had happened in 2011, this had happened in 2015, without looking at what were the consequences even when it happened in 2015. February 2015, inflation rate was 0.6%. A month after, when the elections had been postponed, March 2015, inflation had gone to 0.9%. That was the highest in over 2 years. And even though we can't totally conclude that it was the elections only that led to the rise of inflation, we know that inflation affects the wealth and income of the common man. And so there are grave consequences for even voters. Are there consequences as well for even the government? Oh, yes, there is. We just saw the recent report from the NBS that our GDP has grown by over 14 trillion naira. So we are now at a GDP of 127 trillion naira compared to 113 trillion naira that it was in 2017. But here's what 14 trillion naira means per day. That is the average of 38 billion naira. That is how much productivity we grow every day. 38 billion naira on an average. So when things do not work out, we should consider that we are toying with as much as 38 billion naira. And that is the factor of what we potentially could have lost. Oh yes, we probably haven't lost up to 38 billion naira today, but it's a multiple of that. And so the considerations are huge.
I will get back to you, Jide. I saw you shaking your head, particularly when he mentions frontline, not mentioning any names now. But do the statistics worry you in terms of the turnout?
Absolutely. It should worry anybody. And the facts that he's laid out are very true. I think two things. One, we should always, I think, going from these particular elections, to pay more attention on all the other parties apart from the two main parties, because of what has happened so far, like you mentioned earlier. Not having the financial muscle as them, but the amount of progress that these political parties have done should be commended highly. But I agree that the effect is we really can't at this point in time, because the zeal for Nigerians for this particular election was on a very high note. I think that statistically we probably would have seen, if the elections had held today, we should have seen quite a number of people turn out to vote. But between now and next week, quite frankly, we do not know what that will be.
That's serious.
That's a very serious thing.
Miriam Yakub in our Abuja studios. You say you represent the poorest of the poor, the bottom of the bottom. And I'll be very interested, because in as much as you made that sound as if, it's, a particularly disadvantaged group. In terms of numbers, that's about the highest group. And therefore, do you think that with what has happened now, with Jide's explanation about the statistics, and with Mr. Daniel's issue of, okay, between now and next Saturday, there's also the issue of how you keep some of these newer entrants into the political space in the minds of the voters. Do you think come next Saturday, this portends danger for what would have been the momentum had the election taken place today?
Okay, I don't get that part, that by next Saturday, how will this impact the turnout of the people at the lowest bottom?
That's correct. That is, in a short sentence, what I was asking, yes.
Yes. When I come here, this group of people that I represent, they also watch TV. So I have to keep my own, vocab to the level they can grasp. Let me tell you that from number one, it will affect them, that I know. Because, let's take for example, Ashuru in Use Market, my jeweler. So now, he has saved his money, like 5,000 naira, to go to Katsina to go and vote. And he was very excited about this. He has gone there, and he called me about 2 a.m. when this happened and said, after 2 a.m. and said he's on his way back. Where is he going to get another money to go back next week? And take, you have to understand that weekends, like Saturday, is the biggest sales for them. He has forfeited today, and next Saturday he's going to do the same. Where is the money? His entire goods is not up to 20,000. So this is the problem. So how is he going to go back? There are many of them. There are Meruas who traveled. How much is he getting from a 20 naira jug of water that he's selling to go and travel to Kano? So this is where my concern is. Now we should not be too quick to make such a monumental decision that will affect people. We are talking about disenfranchising people. So you should not take this decision without, carrying us along, having meetings. Don't feel too big. You are the chairman of INEC, then a civil society cannot make that appointment to sit with you to tell you their concern. It can help. That is a feedback, a direct feedback that can help you in most of the decision and most of the things that you're going to do. The way we carry on leadership in this country, I think, is everything we should take another look at.
Now, Ezenwawagu, let me, because we are now in the last 10 minutes or so of this discussion, I'm curious to know, from your own angle, the civil society groups, who the chairman of INEC actually took out time to thank very much for their role in this process. Whether or not you are satisfied with what has happened about the postponement and his explanation for it, now looking ahead, with everything we have heard so far, it would seem as if there is the opportunity for there to be significant change between now and Saturday on certain critical things. What needs to be done? In very short, quick bullet points, what needs to be done for that kind of impact to be made, and we see it by Saturday?
Okay, Jide talked about all the consequences. So that leads me to perhaps consequence management. How do we manage some of these consequences that he has outlined? The nature of the conversation that should take place within the next 1 week will be the same energy that we put in getting people out to go collect their PVC, the same kind of energy we put in asking them to come and vote. Is important to unleash that in the next 1 week so that we can have, we can raise the confidence level for this election. It's also critical for us to, since we are doing some kind of analysis in terms of understanding perhaps why some of the challenges that we face. We are the only country in the world where we put things we call sensitive material into the vault of the CBN. I don't know any other place where election materials are put in the vault of the central bank of a country. So we need to also raise the trust levels for our EMB. The electoral management body will need to deal with internal governance issues that makes Nigerians distrusting of some of their officials. It's very, very key. We need to, as civil society, like I said, put the pressure on INEC to brief Nigerians in the next 1 week, if not every day, at least in every 2 days, so that we have a sense of where we are going forward. The religious organizations, the faith-based groups, community organizations will need to intensify. The ban on campaign does not affect us. We can't continue voter education. We can't continue to mobilize citizens to do what they have to do, especially to understand that there is a need for them to vote. Because they are not voting is actually a form of voting, and that is critical. We can't continue to rehash the pains that we feel, the embarrassment that this has cost us. I think we have to lift ourselves above it very quickly and do what we have to do to ensure that next week works out.
Mr. Guye, let me ask you, because I know you've been listening to everybody else. You heard him say a daily briefing is like a menu from INEC daily is what we might need. Would that do it?
Maybe perhaps to engender some confidence, and then to keep matters in perspective and encourage Nigerians that this election this time around will be delivered. But in terms of the credibility of that message, you know, your guess is as good as mine. I will hope that I won't rush to the eve of the election again and then be told excuses. By Wednesday, INEC should be ready to tell Nigerians we're ready. So we're not going to wait for Thursday and Friday to find out whether INEC will be ready, because the cost has been colossal. For parents who have children in boarding schools, you know, that was forced to embrace midterm so early. Now their children are home, they have to take them back to school. So what will happen in the next 1 week? You know, what will happen on the 9th? So the cost is huge in every respect, social, economic, political, and the inconvenience and all that. And what our friend in Abuja spoke about is real.
You mean Miriam?
Miriam, I know of ordinary people in Lagos, around my office, of northern extraction, who traveled to Borno State to go and vote. I'm not kidding. And these are ordinary Nigerians. So who's going to be responsible for the transportation, for the cost? You know, this ought not to have happened, but it's happened, and we're going to live through it and ensure that this doesn't happen again in our country.
You know, one of the things that we've dealt with, you know, in the course of campaigns, this voter apathy of people feeling that their vote was not going to count. You have made matters worse. For them now, you can almost feel them saying, we already know it's not going to count. We already know there's a plan, there's a cynical plan, you know, and at the end of the day, it's not. And this is a big problem. It's a major issue. It's just not nice for Nigeria.
No, but between now, all the various consequences have been very widely discussed. But between now and Saturday, when we hope, and we expect that we're going to have another shot at this, what, in your view, coming from the angle of a political party now, needs to be done? What we've heard about daily briefings. GT has talked about the fact that, you know, some level of confidence building and so on. And you know, I know we've also heard about the idea that any issues that arise should be quickly brought to notice so that there can be tremendous pressure to resolve that problem immediately, even if it is a problem not of INEC's making. If it is an issue, because we're talking only of INEC now. Someone has mentioned the issue of security elsewhere, that we may also be ambushed on security and a number of other matters, you know, ahead. Now, apart from those, what else?
No, I think in my opinion, we've discussed all of this today, and it's important that people are carried along. Just like GT said, that we shouldn't wait till, you know, Thursday, Friday. That we should start early to start making sure all stakeholders are informed daily of what is going on to give that level of confidence. Because right now, I think we've lost it.
And if I may just put it, because why this particularly rancors, this postponement or rescheduling, was that Nigeria had to wake up to find out that an election in which they were supposed to be participating on that day had been cancelled.
But in 2011, people were already voting when it was cancelled.
Exactly. I'm saying that we needn't not lash on to that 2011 example and say it happened in 2011. We can always do it again. No, we're better than that. So the point I'm making is that I'm yet to be convinced, in spite of all that has been said by the INEC chairman, that he didn't know on Wednesday, Thursday, that he will not be able to deliver the election.
Actually, I would say that statement, he said even up until 2 a.m. this morning, he still didn't know.
That's according to him.
Yeah. That's according to him. That's what he said.
That's infuriating.
That's what he said.
I'm serious. I don't want to betray anger on national, international television. That's infuriating. Because, as you know, the media told Nigerians 6, 7, 8 hours before that cancellation, that postponement, that INEC will postpone. They weren't speculating. They were quoting sources from INEC. And then you have a chairman telling us that he didn't know till 2 a.m. Who was he telling that to? Idiots? He shouldn't go that route, really.
Careful, GT. You see, you're displaying the anger. You say you don't want to display.
GT, you're going to have, you're probably going to have one of the last shots of the show. Please go on.
You know,
and I want you to address what I raised about India. How is India doing it? Because if you talk about levels of development in very many parts of India, they're as bad as us, if not worse.
Well, people could say that India is a parliamentary, they practice a parliamentary system of government. They don't have a
Does that make it easier?
People will tell you that.
People will tell you that.
People will tell you that. But that's not the reason why we cannot deliver on our elections.
Jide, what do you think?
You know, the Chinese sign of crisis, if you look at it, for the Chinese, it means danger and opportunity, even though it's a sign of crisis. And so while the INEC chairman is on the hot seat, let's not make the perfect the enemy of the good. That's one. The two is, speaking to hopes, this election has on INEC's database more youths than ever before. More than half of those registered today are young. But here's my concern. While I was monitoring and waiting for a final confirmation on what will happen this morning, I woke up this morning to find Canada trending. Not even INEC, Canada. So I said to myself, was there an attack in Canada? Was there any challenge on ISIS in Canada? Only to find out that young Nigerians were asking themselves, how do you get to Canada? What's the fastest route to Canada? That speaks to fears and hopes.
Yeah.
And so, if there's one thing INEC, among several initiatives, if there's one thing INEC needs to do more, it's disclosure.
That's right.
Today, we are going into an election that each state has no information as to how many permanent voter cards are being collected. And that is the very foundation of how many people will vote in that state. So INEC has to make that disclosure, and that disclosure must be done now. INEC can go further by even providing that information per polling unit. Because what that does is it allows other parties prepare strategic plans on how they want to win.
And by the way, Jide, let me just sieve this in. Because INEC told Nigerians that that disclosure as per the voters, permanent voters card will be made before the election. The fact that that disclosure was not made before the 2 a.m. realization by the chairman that the election will not hold meant a lot. And that, indeed, debunked his assertion that I never knew until 2 a.m. that the election will not hold.
That's another way.
And in the final analysis, you know, I would like to end, if that's how we end in this segment, with the words of Abraham Lincoln. And he had advised us that you cannot avoid the responsibilities of tomorrow by evading it today. Whatever happens, an election will hold in this country, and it must be transparent, free, fair, and credible.
Absolutely.
That is the hope, that is the belief, that is the trust, that is the aspiration, I'm sure, of all those who are participating in the process. And we hope that when, as this week we're entering from tomorrow starts, and INEC goes back to now map its way all the way along with the other agencies involved in this, because a lot of attention and a lot of focus has been made on INEC.
But it's a multi-agency operation.
Task, which one of you already referred to, that we might not get ambushed by INEC this week. It might be another one of those agencies who has not been in the spotlight this time, who may then emerge. So all eyes must be on all the agencies that are involved. That's the takeaway that I have from all of this. But Ijoma, you want to thank our...
Yes, I'd like to thank... I'm not going to thank everybody, because some of us are still going to remain, as the Verdict Studio is still open. But indeed, to just thank you, Jide Ogunsowo, Channels TV, Data Information Consultant, always there for us. Thank you, Jide. And also to thank the National Chairman, Alliance for New Nigeria, Emmanuel Dania. Is it Dania? Dania, fantastic. Just to thank you for joining us as well. Well, like we say, the election studios will remain open. at 7:30. For now, we are going to be going to poll stream, and then we'll have news track at the top of the hour before we now continue with our robust election coverage at 7:30. Don't forget that the hashtag is #TheVerdict and #2019 elections as well. Oh, almost forgot to thank you as well, the convener, Voters Union, Mariam Yakubu, there she is, and also the member from Yaga Africa, Ezenwa Nwango, to thank you so much for being part of the program. Ladi?
Yes, indeed. And of course, it is also our own turn to say thank you
Yes.
for having us be in your homes right from morning all through the day up until now.
It's amazing how the day pans out. You know, we started
right.
the day wondering why, and, you know, ending the day with a few more answers than we had earlier.
Than we had at the beginning, and a little bit more optimism.
Yeah.
Just a little bit more optimism. Even though I can see GT already, you know, I'm not too sure about the optimism. But we want to thank you all. And we all hope that we can sustain that optimism into the new week and into the promised date, which is this time next week, Saturday, 23rd of February, for the first set of elections.
Fingers crossed. Thanks a lot for being with us, and good night.
Good night.